Welcome to the Foul Play YouTube channel. Well, welcome back, everybody. It's Thursday again, and it's time for another Thirsty for Theory Thursday, and this is our continuation of the calls. And I'm sure this is not the only set of Thirsty for Thursday that we're going to have about the calls, but it certainly is the second in the continuing series, and we're going to jump around on a lot of different topics. We have an excellent panel of researchers here today. We have Bibi, we have Christy, and we have Sam. Again, I'd like to thank everyone who has put the effort in toward getting the calls. We have last week, Kaboom Blam Zoom joined us, who was responsible for forwarding the initial calls. He pointed out to us that it was AC Rookie on Twitter who actually got the FOIA for the most recent batch. So we'd like to thank him for doing that. These were not free to do. It takes money to do this. We have Zoe, who's not with us on the call today, but she does a phenomenal amount of work loading those calls up to YouTube. And Christy, one of our panelists today, she has been taking the time to listen to these calls sequentially one by one, and there are hours and hours and hours worth of calls, and it is just unbelievable. By the time we get done with this, there'll be close to 1,000 calls. So I'd like to thank everybody for the work that they do in getting these out, whether it's time, whether it's money. It's going to raise general awareness in the community, so thanks to everybody for that. So last week we talked about some of the initial calls between Steven and Carla and his mother, and how they struck us with regard to this is just not the actions of somebody who's guilty giving up and throwing in the towel as they uncover the evidence that is inevitably going to put you away. It's more the actions of somebody who's innocent, who's desperately trying to find somewhere where they can find the truth about who might have planted the evidence, or somebody who might know something about the actions of law enforcement, or something like that.
Well, also Christie's insight into where she's starting to be able to see where the narrative was built that Kratz had as to what went on.
That's incredibly important because that's insight that you're only going to get by listening to those calls sequentially, and that's exactly what she's doing. And again, she is taking donations for the therapy sessions that she's going to need after getting done with all these calls. So does anybody have any comments about last week's podcast? I didn't get their chance to say anything that they wanted to, or should we jump in?
I think we're ready to jump in.
We're ready to. So the first thing that I wanted to bring up about this, and it's something that we probably should have brought up was last week, was does anybody know how much it costs to make these calls?
Okay, $5 initially, and then 45 cents or so per minute after that, and I'll hand it off to Christy.
I did a rough estimate in downtime while I was listening, because I really can't do much else while I'm listening. And I did a rough calculation. I have the time of the calls and I know how much they cost, and I think I did the count at call 194. And as of call 194, I had listened to 3,603 minutes of Steven talking. And if I did the math right, and I could be off a little bit, it's the tune of $2,500.
Wow, that's just amazing. Yeah, that is amazing.
$470 to connect the call, and then 45 cents a minute. So some of these calls are 45 minutes long. He doesn't have 5-minute conversation. I'm so excited when there's a 5-minute one, because I know I'm going to get quick. I pull up the 10 calls I'm going to do today, and there's like 6 hours worth of time. Are you kidding? How? And they talk about nothing. They're talking, and Steven's alone. They have him isolated. He's in a block by himself. He has nobody to talk to. It's him, the walls, the bars, a 2-inch pencil and a TV. That's what he's got. And they give him free reign of the phone. And the one thing, if people are reading the PDF summary or even the summary in the Stephen Calls room over on the Foul Play Discord server, I put a note in there after the 4th call that I find it very odd that Stephen has free reign of the phone. 9 out of 10 times, at least any experience I've ever had, jail phone calls they have a time limit. 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever they are, there seems to be a cutoff. And while Stephen is sitting in Calumet County Jail, there's no time limit. He can talk for as long as he wants. He can make as many calls as he wants. And I really feel like this was on purpose to get him to talk. They could get whatever they could out of his phone calls. And he even catches on to that. He even says, they want me talking. They want me to keep talking. He says it. He knows it too. And it still doesn't help him shut up. It still does not help him.
He cannot shut his mouth to save his life.
He can't.
He keeps talking.
There's even phone calls where Dolores is like, the lawyer told me not to talk to you on the phone about it. I'm not supposed to tell you. Don't say it on this phone. I'm not telling you on this phone. And he's, just tell me. Give me a hint. Tell me a little bit. Just tell me. I mean, and I get where he's coming from, but if that man could have just taken a breath and just shut his mouth, we might not be here today talking about this.
Right. That's a pretty powerful statement right there.
I believe that a lot of what they used against him came out of his own mouth. They took things he said out of context and twisted it to fit their narrative. He's talking about sweating during sex in a completely innocent conversation with a girl that he's flirting with. And the next thing you know, we have Ken Kratz repeatedly talking about how sex crazed and sweaty Stephen was. And after listening to these phone calls with Debbie Klemp, I get where, and even the Jody one, I get where Ken Kratz decided to call Stephen sex crazed. There is a lot of sex talk between Jody and Stephen, and there's a lot of dirty sex talk between Stephen and Debbie, to the point that the phone call I'm on right now, I actually had to pause it because I'm afraid to keep listening. I haven't been able to go back to it yet. I'm really afraid of what is going to get said next.
Are you afraid because it's something that you haven't done? Is that why you're afraid about it?
No, that's not why at all. But I mean, I'm listening to Steven Avery and Debbie Klemp, and the call I'm on right now is right after a visit. And she asks him if he wants to come play with her, and she tells him that she's really, really horny. And I'm just, this is a good time for a pause. I can't listen to any more right now. I'm really afraid I'm going to hear some phone sex, and I'm not sure I want to hear. Actually, I know I don't want to hear it.
I'd also like to point out how people often question if they had maybe an illegal wiretap on Avery Salvage Yard prior to the 31st. And that maybe that's how that they knew that Teresa was going to be out there to get a head start on it. But he clearly, we haven't got the call, but he talks to his mom about that he had a conversation prior to the 31st with Jody at the jail, where he told her that he was going to sell Barbara's car and have the girl from Auto Trader.
Aren't the visits recorded too? The visits,
yes.
Are they recorded too?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so.
And how do they do that?
They're behind glass on a phone.
Behind glass, yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to pick up the phone. You can't even touch each other.
Correct. Right. And Debbie Klemp has a big problem with the fact that she can't touch her cute Stephen.
Oh boy. Okay, look, what goes on between a man and a woman on their private phone calls, that's one thing. What gets me is that some of these calls happen between Jody and Stephen when both of them are in jail, and they actually both call Dolores at the same time, who helps facilitate the call. And it's not like she takes, the receiver and, flips it so the receiver's talking into the speaker of one and vice versa. She actually relays what one is saying to the other. and having the
Sometimes.
conversation. And they even get a little bit, risque during those.
And Dolores,
It's hilarious because she actually is facilitating this for them and not judging them. I mean, she's trippy. I love it.
Big boobies. She had a hard time saying big boobies in one. You're big boobies. Yeah.
Dolores is a trip. I love her. She's a trip.
Oh,
She's a
my
very
goodness.
cute little woman. I love her to death. I feel for her greatly. And that poor woman, the things that she had to hear.
Well,
Yeah,
the things she had to do.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
That too.
Yeah. And there's just no end of work that Steven wanted to pile on her, and she was just not equipped to handle it. He in talking to her, he's like wanting to make all these phone calls to start solicit donations from large companies, so to get enough bail money so that he'd be out for Christmas. Just a whole bunch of stuff that can you call this person and ask them? And she forgets everything by the time she forgets it in the middle of writing it down sometimes. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
Poor Dolores. I mean, what a trooper she was.
And she's writing notes on like little cards, and she's got them everywhere. And Steven keeps yelling at her to get a notebook and put it all in one notebook, because she keeps saying, I got notes everywhere. I got this written down over here, and I got this written down over here. And the other thing they do a lot, and it's really hard, and this is my other reason for listening in chronological order, is because they talk in a lot of pronouns. Did you talk to that guy? What about that girl? What about that woman? What about the guy over there? And if you didn't listen to 5 calls previous, you have no idea what dude over there he's talking about. You don't know. Because did you call that guy? Did you call that woman? Did you call that place? You don't know unless that's why I have to listen to them in chronological order, because I have to, so that I know who the hell they're talking about at the time.
In their own way, it is almost cryptic.
It is.
Because he is trying to be careful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but he's not successful.
No, he's not. He's not
Unfortunately.
at all.
No.
Yeah, they're not fooling anyone. Maybe they're fooling Earl, but not much of anybody else.
No, definitely not. And Earl claims to have an IQ of 40, so who knows?
That's a great thing to brag about, Earl.
An IQ. An IQ.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
it was written in a text message, and he says, I have an IQ of 40. And then he wrote IQ was spelled IKOO. And then he wrote 40 and 2. So I'm not sure what that was supposed to translate to. And the person that he was talking to, he kept calling her a psycho, and he was writing the word cycle. So I'm really not sure how intelligent Earl is at all.
Well, he could have been a victim of autocorrect too.
It happened repeatedly, like 12 times. So I'm
Okay,
I've
but
used that excuse before.
But for IQ, you can literally put 2 letters of the alphabet.
Yeah. IQ, IKOO. I believe it's IKOOO. I think there was 3 O's. I'd have to go back through my phone and look.
I mean, how simple. An I and a Q.
And a Q. It's like okay. But yeah,
Okay.
I don't. Mm-mm.
So just to remind everybody, you alluded to it quickly, Christy, but let me take the time to do it a little bit better. The summary PDF that Christy has as she goes through the calls, you can find that on the Foul Play Discord. You can find that in Ma'am Gossip. You can find it on Christy's Twitter. What's your Twitter handle, Christy?
I really don't even know. I believe it's Christy Lynn. I really don't even know.
It's
I think
IQ
it's
at,
Christy Lynn.
okay.
Something like that.
Well,
Yeah,
and everybody is more than welcome to come to Discord in our Foul Play room and help us with research, view our research, make friends with us, whatever.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you can't find me on Twitter, you can find me in MAM Gossip. I'm a moderator there. And you can find me in Discord as well. I'm looking up my Twitter name right now. It is Christy Lynn. It's at Christy24741. And my name is Christy Lynn.
And you also,
Awesome.
I believe, have the PDFs in Ma'am Gossip too, as well.
I do. I have them. I posted them in Gossip. I posted them in Discord.
And I think they're at the top where you can get documents easily.
And for
Yes,
people who
I
don't
did.
know, Ma'am Gossip is a Facebook group. I don't think we said
Yes.
that.
It's
Where do I find Ma'am
Facebook.
Gossip?
Yep, Ma'am Gossip is in Facebook, and I believe the PDFs, I believe I was smart enough to put them in the files section that day so they could be easily found. And again,
Yeah, I
if you
believe
just go
so,
find
too.
me on, I don't go to Twitter much anymore. So if you just go to Twitter and like what probably my most recent tweet is the PDF. I'll actually go up there later and pin it so that it's right there at the top of my Twitter. And again, feel free to message me. I get to my messages pretty quickly. If anybody needs it, I'll be more than happy to send it. And as far as the PDFs go,
Repeat your Twitter again, your hand.
it's at Christie 24741. So KRISTI 24741. And then my name is Christy Lynn on Twitter. The PDF, as of right now, there's only a PDF out for calls 1 through 115, which would be for the month of November of 2005. Once I get through all of the month's calls, I'll release the PDF of December 2005 and then January 2006 and so on. I am keeping a running tally of the descriptions. The descriptions are written in the YouTube channel, in the description area on each phone call. And there's also a room in the Discord server called Steven's Calls that I update them like every 10 calls or something that I do, but the PDF won't be done until I'm through December. Right now, I think I'm only on like December 16th. So I still got 2 weeks of December 5th, December 2005 to listen to.
So if somebody wanted an early look at the December calls, they would have to literally come to our Discord channel and look in the Steve Avery call room.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, I think Millbill is also loading up the ones that he thinks it takes so long to load these up to YouTube. God bless Zoe for all the work that she's doing on that. She's got literally 2 computers at once.
She does.
Uploading these calls to YouTube.
And I told her she wasn't helping me get them, because at first I was trying to stay right on top of her as far as listening as they were loaded. And then she started doing them 2 at a time. And I was like, well, that doesn't help me listen to them 2 at a time. So, and I love the fact that Millbilly and Kaboom and some others are going to some key dates. But with what I picked up, the little things that I picked up, especially with the sweating during sex, now I just feel it's a mission and I have to listen to them in chronological order because I will miss things if I don't. So I'm going to plug away at it slowly. Yeah, I think it's a great thing. I've had a lot of people offer to help me and I feel like I can work this alone, and I appreciate everybody's messages thanking me for doing this. It's been great. And it kept me going because at one point I asked myself if I was wasting my time, and then I've probably gotten a minimum of 150 to 200 private messages from people thanking me for doing this because, they work and they don't have time to go through all these calls. And I happen to be fortunate enough to be a stay-at-home mom and have the time to do this. So I'm just going to keep on doing it. And a quick tip for anybody listening to these calls, if you change the playback speed to 1.25 or 1.5, you can get through them a lot quicker and you can still understand.
Well, especially when it's the Averys talking. Maybe when it's a reporter, they start sounding a little chipmunky. But
yes, as long as you're listening to Stephen and Dolores or Stephen and Barbara or Stephen and Chuck, you can absolutely listen to them at a faster speed and you won't miss a thing.
Awesome. Okay, so why don't we move into our discussion of the calls again. Last week we started to talk about Debbie Klemp. Who is Debbie Klemp, and why is it that she is sticking her nose in all this?
Debbie Klemp is a woman who wrote Steven Avery a letter right after he was first arrested, and she included her phone number in that letter. And then he eventually calls her. I believe the first day he called her was actually Thanksgiving. I'm looking for it right now. I believe the first time he called her was Thanksgiving. And they kind of, she asks if she can come visit him. So they start a little, I don't really want to call it a relationship. It's a very odd situation. And
it's flirtatious. It's flirtatious.
Watching it unfold is quite funny because we all know Steven is absolutely obsessed in love with Jody. I'm not quite sure what his original motive for contacting Debbie was, but my feel at this point, after listening to him talk to her, listening to him talk to his mother about her, and listening to him talk to Chuck about her, he's trying to pawn her off on Chuck. He's telling her, because she has to, the
That's
dairy.
an awesome theory.
Oh no, it's not a theory. It's actually happening. I'm listening to it happen. So Debbie's visiting him and she's telling him about this. She lives on a dairy farm, 185-acre dairy farm, and it's about to be sold and she's going to have to move and she's leaving her husband and all this stuff is going on. And Steven's really not interested in her. He flirts with her on the phone, but I really think it's just to keep her appeased. I don't think he really likes her in that way. And at some point in time, he tells her that she can go stay with Chucky. And Debbie is under the impression that Steven means she can go live with his brother until he gets out and then they can be together. That, you know, Chuck putting her up would be a friendly thing. Well, then Steven talks to Chuck, and that's not Steven's intention. Steven's intention is to give Debbie to Chuck like she's his leftover
For them
grilled cheese
to hook up.
sandwich.
Yeah.
He's pimping. He's pimping. He's getting his pimp on.
Chuck's like, well,
He says
Oh.
it to Dolores. She'd be good for Chucky. And then the next thing you know, he's on the phone with Chucky. This one would be good for you. This one would be good for you. And Chucky's all into it. Well, I don't remember what she looks like. I didn't see her in the courtroom. What does she look
Choke her
like?
with a phone cord.
Yeah. You know, Debbie makes a comment about that when Steven says to her, well, you can go stay by Chucky. And she says something, and I know she makes the comment of, well, as long as he doesn't attack me. And I'm
Yeah,
thinking, girl,
and
if
he
you
used
only
the
knew.
word, she used the word attack. Yeah.
She did use the word attack. And then the other thing with Debbie Klemp that I want to touch on is that a lot of people seem to think that she was a plant. And I understand why people think that. And I'm not saying anybody's wrong, but my gut instinct on this with what I'm hearing, she was not a plant.
Well, she's also like a bored housewife that no longer has cows to milk and is
Oh,
going through a
God.
divorce.
And it's
She's like that
unclear-
woman in Uncle Buck that comes across the street.
yeah, yeah.
She's like desperate for a man.
She is very desperate. And that's why I really don't think that she's a plant, because I really think that if they were going to plant somebody, they would have used somebody smarter. This woman's not bright either. I just feel like they would have picked a better person. This one, I don't think they would have trusted her to keep her cover not blown. Or maybe that is her cover. I have no idea. But my gut instinct is this woman is not a plant. Now, further down the road, Lynn Hartman or somebody could have absolutely been a plant. But I don't
definitely.
I don't believe Debbie Klemp was a plant. She just wasn't smart enough. I think she was just somebody.
She happened
who-
into the picture at the right time, and he was trying to get his ass out of jail. Oops,
Yeah.
that's
Well,
me.
So to
Shame on you,
to
Sam.
touch back a hair, I think that Steve's interest in her might have been that he didn't really trust Jody, especially he had this big
I'm
mistrust
with you,
of
baby.
Jody.
Yep, you
I'm
just
with
took
you.
the words right out of my mouth. I was going to bring that up too. He was starting to wonder, well, because Jody had been saying things were getting back to him that Jody was saying, like that he beat her or he choked her. And he was starting to feel some betrayal from Jody. So originally, when he first contacted Debbie Klemp, I do think there was some kind of interest, is more of a
Curiosity.
more of a Steven doesn't want to be alone. I don't think Steven wants to be single. So if Jody's leaving him or something happens with Jody, he needs a backup plan. And he says something to Dolores. I can't remember if it's Dolores or Chuck, but he says something at one point. Well, I don't know what I'm going to do now that I got two of them. And they ask, you know, what's your motive with Debbie basically? And well, I don't know. Got to wait and see what happens with Jody first. I mean, he loves Jody.
Also, though, he's not aware of this, but Jody in one of those interviews, that three-part interview where
Right.
they play the phone call of Debbie, she throws Steve under the bus immediately. And that, God, I can't remember exactly what it was she said. Do you guys know?
Yeah, that he put his meat in her.
No, right away in the interview, she says something like,
Jody or Debbie?
Jody does, about,
That's what they said in the call. That got Jody
about
upset.
like, was it something about, he said to her something, and she kind of says it, and it like threw him under the bus. God, I can't remember what it was.
That he loved her?
No, like that, I want to say cleanup, but it wasn't about cleaning up. It was, he had said something, and they kind of twisted it, the police then, like that he meant that he did do it.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about now. They treated it as some type of embedded confession.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the words were either, but I know what you're talking about now. Yeah, they called it an embedded confession.
So it did kind of seem like she threw him under the bus there right away in the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I was certainly struck by that as well, and I got the impression that, yeah, I remember what it was. It was that.
I know what it was,
because she wasn't around. Right.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. Yes,
this wouldn't have happened if you weren't in jail.
Yeah,
right. And what that obviously means is that that he would have had another witness, because they spend most of their time at home, right? She goes out for alcohol and AA meetings. That's about it.
They're always making him rapey and sex craved, right. So they took it to mean that she'd have been there for him to have sex with, but since she wasn't, he had to do this awful thing to be able to get sex.
Right, and it's so stupid, because they just got done playing Jody a call where where Steven is obviously, in that call being very flirtatious. The easiest person in the world to cheat on is somebody who's in prison, right, or jail. Why is it that Jody can't figure out that, if he's getting a lot of calls here, if he wants to go out and find somebody to have sex with while she's in jail, he can obviously do that. It doesn't need rape photographers that show up in his house. He
wouldn't have to rape a photographer to get sex, because he's about to be at least $100,000 but most likely at least $1 millionaire. Sex would have been thrown at him from probably both sexes of people, in the hopes of getting money.
Absolutely. They would have been crawling out of the woodwork. Steven would have been the hottest man in America.
Yeah, number one most eligible bachelor in all of Wisconsin.
So to not lose the thread here, we're talking about how Steven was, being flirtatious with Debbie and what his motivations might be. People are offering their opinions, and my opinion is more aligned with BB. I think that Steven does not want people in his life who do not believe that he is innocent of this crime, and you can hear him on the calls. People who think that he doesn't want people in his life if they think he's guilty. Absolutely. And he says it on the calls. Earl wants to talk about this. Forget it. I don't want anything to do with Earl. And he does start to question his faith in Jody. So he to me he is giving it the air of a plan B. Kind of keeping his options open, kind of thing, in the event that Jody doesn't profess sort of exactly what he wants to hear. I think eventually she does. I don't that phone call that we just talked about happened while Jody was still in jail, and she does sort of in a later call tell Steven, I don't believe you did this, and even after that interview, while she's still in the jail, she does get out. She eventually moves back to the trailer. And even though Fassbender have said, you should get rid of him. He's obviously guilty of this crime. Do you want to be married to a person like this who's even cheating on you? They patch things up. Steven is very into Jody. But my impression is that he's keeping his options open at the time.
The other thing that you have to consider is, how old was Steven the first time he went to prison?
Early 20s.
25.
Yeah.
His mentality, his mentality, although he's, I believe, 43 when all this is going down, he's not 43 mentally. He was institutionalized for 18 years in a prison. He didn't get to mature and experience relationships and, function like you or I do at our ages. So he's still early 20s, late teens. And I think that's why he's into the whole keeping his options open and flirting with any girl who's going to pay attention to him.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Him and Jody are both very needy, and this Debbie seems needy.
They'd be a perfect threesome. They'd be a perfect Three's Company situation. They really would. It's just, Steven loves Jody, and I don't have any doubts about that. Debbie, again, I don't know where this is going because obviously I'm listening to the calls as they go. I know I know nothing pans out because she's not in the picture as of now, but I can't wait to see how this all goes down.
Yeah, one wonders.
She hasn't been for quite some time either.
Right.
Jody or Debbie?
No, Debbie. Debbie.
Yeah.
It was short-lived.
I'm wondering if if Debbie is part of the reason why Steven and Jody eventually break up. That's been mysterious as to why Jody, sort of turned around and
in that interview, the
Steven.
cops are playing a private phone call between Steve and Debbie for Jody, just to show her, you should cave on him because look, he doesn't care about you. He's already moving on.
Did they do it again? But she's still in prison at that time, right? And she gets out. And, there's calls out of jail, and she gets out and she calls him on I think the 25th or 26th of December. Maybe it's the 20th of December. I listened to that call yesterday, and Steven almost breaks down in tears after talking to her in that call. That's a heart-wrenching call to listen to. I don't have to remember that call here.
Jody does get out early? Because Jody's not supposed to get out until March. I just listened to that the other day. She's excited that she has 82 days left. She's supposed to be getting out March 6th of 2006. I don't think I've ever been clear on when she actually got out. They are talking about her getting out early. So she gets out in December?
I think the main issue was that her fine had to be paid up to get out. Because Steve was saying if he got that money through, he could pay her fine off and then she'd be free to get out.
You see, I'm unclear. I don't really remember all of that. It's not anything I've ever focused on. The only thing I ever remember hearing was that Jody eventually walked away because she couldn't take it anymore. Law enforcement really put her through the ringer. They were making her life a living hell. She tried. As much as I really don't have much respect for Jody, and I don't really think all that highly of her, I do think she tried. I do think she tried to hang on. And I think that the powers that be just made it impossible for her to do that.
And it's a difficult situation when you have all of law enforcement, while you're under their thumb, telling you how he raped and brutally murdered this woman.
Right.
A lot of people's going to turn their back and walk away, even family members at times.
It's one thing to hang on for as long as she did and then leave because she can't take it anymore. It's another thing to go on Nancy Grace and say that she ate 2 pounds of rat poison so she could get taken to the hospital.
Well, and the eating the rat poison is supposedly a true narrative, but the incidents of it were, most of them, prior to even meeting Steve. And then supposedly one time after meeting Steve, he comes in, she says she's ate rat poison. Now, whether she really had yet or not, I don't know. But then he's like, no, you rat poison. And then she's like, well, watch. And then she does eat rat poison in front of him. I don't know. I picture her pouring a spoonful of it and eating it. I don't know.
That's a lot.
Well, I don't know how big of a spoon or anything, but I don't know. Maybe she grabbed a pinch of it and put it in her mouth. Who knows? I don't know. but she does do some in front of him. I myself believe that she probably waited till he got there, told him that she had ate rat poison, and then does it in front of him because I don't really think she wants to die. And, they usually say people who don't really want to die but are doing it for attention will do it at a time where they know somebody will come and save them.
Absolutely. It looks like there was evidence on her computer or Steven's computer that she was Googling stuff like that.
Yeah. We can't forget that Jody is an alcoholic, and she is in prison for DUI.
Well, and
multiple DUIs.
She also is an abuse survivor from some of her exes when she hooks up with Steve. So whether they got along the best or maybe there was some shoving incidences in their relationship, she already has this past.
Yep.
She's already damaged. She's already got baggage. She's already coming to him with baggage.
A bandful.
Yeah. And I
don't think Steve was abusive to her. I think that there was exaggerations and lies told about him. I do believe that he had a rough time dealing with her and all her issues when he got her, so to speak.
Oh, absolutely.
And that he was doing the best he could. I don't think that he was abusive to her. I think that he just dealt with her however he knew how to deal with that crazy crap.
He admits in a phone call that she stood up and he did push her back down onto the couch, sit down and shut up,
That's a lot different than choking her and beating the crap out of her like other people are saying. And you can hear it. His concern for her is genuine. He makes sure she has phone cards. He's doling money out left and right for her. I mean, even in the calls that are between Steven and Jody prior to his arrest, he's dishing out money left and right. He's even telling her, "You're killing me with this phone bill. What are you doing with all this money? You're killing me."
I believe in some of these phone calls. Go ahead.
Yeah, he's trying to figure out how to pay her fine off early,
so she can get out.
She can get out. Yeah.
But I think in a lot of these phone calls in the beginning, you could hear him tell to some of his family members, "Well, that didn't happen that way, and this is how it was going. And when I got her, she was in this kind of way, and she'd lost her kid and everything else over it." And he was talking about her needing to get clean and be in meetings. I mean, he had his head on right about what direction she needed to go in, and he was all about supporting her that way.
He was trying.
And he's very conscientious about paying bills, paying for things, earning the money to pay for things. He's very conscientious.
He talks about selling. He's going to sell his tools, right? That his dad gave him, that he bought from his dad, and take it back. And he's going to sell them for $1,000. He paid his dad $1,200 for them, to help just pay phone bills and things like that.
Yeah, he has no problem forking over money to Barbara, to Dolores. If he's got it, he's giving it to them. He's got no problem.
Yeah. It's almost as if the money doesn't really mean anything to him,
Yeah. There's times when he's more worried about is Chuck picking up Jody, or is Chuck talking to Jody, or is Jody using her phone card money to talk to Chuck?
Right.
Then he's worried about his own defense, and and the evidence built up against him. He's more upset.
You can tell he is in love with her. He does care so much about her, for real. I mean, in spite of all this Debbie Klemp crap.
Yeah.
And you can even when he's talking to Debbie Klemp and she's saying things like, I don't know, when she's just attempting at her private conversations, you can tell he's just like, yeah, me too. Or
he's entertaining her.
Yeah, I miss you so much. I love you more than anybody else in the world. And he doesn't say anything. He's not, "Oh, I love you more than anybody else in the world too." He never says, "I love you" first. She says, "I love you," and then he just says, "I love you too." And it's almost like he's just saying it because he doesn't know what else to say.
Right. Train monkey syndrome.
Yeah, she starts bawling her eyes out at one point, and he's like, okay, I gotta go. I feel bad for her. I kind of feel bad for Debbie Klemp, but at the same time, I really, really do not.
Right.
Wherever she is right now, I hope she's ashamed of herself.
Well, so Debbie actually ends up going to the December hearing, right?
She went to the December 6th one. Yes, that much I know. She actually, so court started at 1. Debbie Klemp lives about 45 minutes to an hour away from wherever it was going to be. Or maybe she's that far from the prison or the jail and a little bit further from the courthouse. I can't remember. She's got to drive. She's got like an hour drive to get to the courthouse. She gets to the courthouse at 10:30 a.m. for a 1 p.m. court hearing because she wants to sit in the front row so that she can be as close to him as possible. And she is absolutely devastated when she gets to this courthouse 2.5 hours early to sit in the front row next to him to find out that the front row was reserved for family. So then she thinks that she's going to sit like in the next row. No, ma'am, that's reserved for media. You sit your ass in the back. So she is completely devastated that she had to sit in the back, and she just wanted to be close to him. But she did manage to snuggle up to Dolores at some point and become buddy with Dolores. And she's just weaseling her way right in. She's calling Steven's mom now. She's talking to Dolores. She's talking to Carla. She's talked to Barbara. She's just nestling herself right in. The funnier part about that court date, on top of her getting there 2.5 hours early to find out she wasn't going to be able to sit next to Steven, she even called the police station to see if she could bring a camera so she could take pictures of him. Her truck got towed after court that day because she was parked in a no parking zone. So then her car gets towed away. This poor woman, all because she's madly in love with Steven Avery.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. She even goes so far as to cut out pictures of him in the news since she can't since the police won't let her bring the camera so she can take some pictures. She actually goes and buys every newspaper that he is in, cuts out all his pictures from the newspaper, and frames them.
Wow.
Frames them.
Just like law enforcement.
That's weird.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Too bad she couldn't call Jean Couché and see if he was willing to part with his framed drawing.
Maybe she's related to Kratz.
Yeah. Who needs law enforcement when you have Debbie Klemp?
This lady's she's not playing with a full deck. There's something, the elevator's not going all the way to the top floor. Something's not right with her,
Well, hey, look, if our subscribers go down by one tomorrow, then
we know Debbie was listening.
Down here, they would say she's a box short of a Happy Meal or a 6 short of a 4-pack. Yeah.
She's something. She is something. She even at one point Steven calls her and he says, "What are you doing?" And she's like sniffling, listening to sad love songs, holding on to his framed newspaper clipping pictures because she misses him so much. You've known him for like 7 minutes. You've seen him in person for maybe 20 minutes. And come on now. Come on. Really?
I know. It is really calls. I can relate or understand, talking on the phone and befriending someone and helping them kind of hang in there, keep their chin up, but this kind of goes way far out there, way overboard.
It absolutely does. It really is. It's not even high school flirting. It's junior high flirting. It's sad, it's funny, it's hilarious, and it's gross all at the same time.
So what's your primary takeaway from the Debbie Klemp? You felt it was worthy to spend some time talking about her. What do you think the most important thing you got out of that interchange, that long interchange with Debbie over the time that they talked?
Just that Steven's desperate for help, and Steven's gonna talk to anybody who's gonna help him. He's desperate for help. desperate, and she's willing to call all the. She's not only willing, but it almost feels as though she's more capable of doing some of the things that he needs done than Dolores is. Like Debbie puts an ad in the paper. She puts an ad in something called the Buyer's Guide for his defense fund donations. And he's like, that's a really good, and she took it upon herself to do that. That was nothing he ever asked her to do. She thought of that all on her own. And then he gets on the phone with his mother and he says, hey, I want you to do this. And she calls, I think, Madison and Milwaukee. And both of those papers tell her that it's against their policy. They can't do it. And then he tells Debbie that. And then him and Debbie decide that Debbie is going to call them too, because maybe Dolores just didn't know what she was talking about. So Debbie seems slightly more capable of getting him some information and making some things happen. And I think that that's why he's hanging on to her. And that's why he's appeasing her and saying, I love you too. And I miss you too.
Well, and also in that one call, he says how his whatever relative is going to go through the phone book and just call individual people out of the phone book and ask them to donate to his cause. Just cold call regular people out of the white pages.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, maybe I can help with that. Maybe I could do that too. And he said, sure, in your area over there. Yeah, start calling some people and just give them my mom's address to donate and make a note of how much they said they would donate and give them my mom's address.
And this is along
the return address. They didn't want the return address. He didn't want his lawyers knowing how much.
Yeah.
Oh God. So Steven wants everybody to write letters to Steve Glynn and Craig Johnson, his civil case attorneys, and the Innocent Project attorney. And he wants Barbara and Carla and Dolores and Christine Avery, Arland Avery's wife. He wants pretty much everybody, Barbara's boys. He wants everybody to write these letters, basically pleading with these attorneys to please bail Steven out of jail before Christmas so his family can have Christmas, because Dolores is saying she's not having Christmas if Steven's not there. And he tells them numerous times, don't put no names on them, don't put no addresses on them. I don't want them to know who the letters are coming from. So after, I don't know how many calls it takes to get this done, but finally, Carla writes one letter to Steve Glynn, one letter to Craig Johnson, and she signs her name, and Dolores puts her address on the return envelope. And Steven's like, are you kidding me? I told you. Now they're gonna,
oh my God.
The man holds on to an extreme amount of patience, because I'm listening to him and just knowing my own fuse and my own patience level, I'd have been cussing everybody out. Are you friggin' stupid? I asked you to do one thing for me and you can't. And he remains so calm. There's one time that he snaps on his mom about something, and the very next phone call, the first words out of his mouth are, I'm so sorry for yelling at you.
Yeah. What do you think the cost is of Dolores's TV remote control repair by Steven? That's gonna be they have to spend at least half an hour over multiple calls, and that's like you can argue that it's probably like a $50 repair.
I was cracking up when I was listening to those. I was cracking up.
Well, that's part of what broke me on listening to him right there. I still haven't been able to quite repair my mind yet to go back to listen. Our remote quit working in the bedroom, and me and my husband's having this exchange, and I went, oh my God, stop talking. We can't do this. I can't have this conversation with you. I'm like, just fix it. Don't even tell me what you did. Just fix it. I can't talk to you about this. We sound like the Averys.
It might have been cheaper for them to just go buy a new TV, honestly. They spend a lot of time talking about how to change the volume, how to change the channel, how to turn the ringer on and off on the cell phone. And she keeps saying, I can't remember what she keeps saying, how do you make the phone stop jittering? The phone just keeps jittering. I want it to ring, not jitter. And I'm going, what the hell is she talking? Oh, the phone's on vibrate. It was in my purse and my purse just started jittering. I'm like, your purse started jittering.
Well, you think back in those days when your phone was on vibrate, it literally would kind of jump around.
Definitely.
Oh my God.
But yeah, the relationship between Steven and Dolores is evidently one of love. Those two love each other. He loves his mommy. She loves her son. He calls her to check on her. He's not really calling her. Yeah, he's calling her because he's bored and he needs human interaction as well. But a lot of those phone calls are for Dolores's benefit, not his.
Yeah, he's worried about how sad she is.
Yeah, and he even said it to somebody. He said, "I do it for her." I forget. It might have been Carla. He said, "Yeah, well, I keep calling her just make sure she's all right. Make sure she's all right." He loves his mom. He's not this vile, aggressive, angry monster that others painted him out to be.
I think the majority of the time during this period of the calls, we're hearing a whole lot from him about he is concerned about his mom. He's concerned about Jody, take care of everybody, he's sending everybody in Jody's direction, make sure she's covered and picked up and all her appointments are made. And, that she makes what she's supposed to on these appointments, that she's getting where she needs to go because she does get out here and there for an hour or two. I don't know if it's to work or to meetings or what. And then the phone cards. Yeah, he's really making sure. And in the process, he's still asking everybody, please, please get my bail.
Absolutely. And he keeps telling Barbara, or go visit Jody. She's really freaking out. He wants people. He's worried about Jody. He's not even all that worried about himself. He's worried about Jody. He's worried about his mom. He's yelling at Barbara, telling her that she's not doing enough. She doesn't do enough to help take care of mom. Telling Chuck and Earl they better take care of mom. It's what his concern is. He's not this monster that they made him out to be.
No. And during the period of time with these phone calls, with him trying to have them, ask for donations and write the letters and get the lawyers to put up bail money and all of that, he ends up realizing he needs to advocate for himself, I think, at some point.
Yep. And even when, Barbara clearly cares more about Scott than she does about what's going on with her brother. And he's clearly pissed off about this. But he never once do you really hear him scream or demean anybody. He's not name calling. He's not.
I would have been ripping my hair out.
Oh my God. I'd have said a hell of a lot worse than he was saying. Trust me. So
yeah, very, very interesting conversation that Steven had with Scott Tadish on December 26th. You can find that call on Millbilly's channel. He calls Barb to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. He talks to Barb. He talks to Scott. He talks to Bobby Dassey. He talks to Brian Dassey. It's under the context of, it's surprising to me how little Steven remembers of the events of October 31st. Like with regard to, if it were me, I'd try and make the sequence of things in my mind. But I think that he legitimately can't remember, or never bother. He's not the type of person who looks down on his watch and is driven by time, probably like you and I are. For me, meetings and stuff like that, and I got to go to work, and I always know what time it is. And if I don't know, if I look at my watch, I'll look at my watch again 5 seconds later because I forgot what I said when I looked at it 5 seconds ago.
Right.
Steven asked. He asked his mother to ask Earl, "What time did you and Fabian come down by me?" When he's talking to Scott Tadich, he said, "Okay, when you got back from Green Bay, what time was that? How big was the fire? What time? It was 8:30. The fire, and by that time the fire was almost out." And Scott Tadich says, "Yup."
But yet at trial, that thing was
that same fire was, look at the size of that fire. Oh yeah, it was engulfing half of Manitowoc.
Well, and also in that phone call with Steve's mom, I believe it is the number 6 one. I believe that's the one. He says that how could I add a big enough fire when the doghouse is right there next to the fire pit and the
propane. Yep, and the propane tank.
Yeah.
And the propane tank.
Yeah, and the call he has with Barb right after Brendan gets arrested is just another amazing one, where he goes through the evidence that and his recollection of the timeline, how Brendan never showed up with a letter, how his mother brought him the mail, how Earl was down at a certain time, and when did all this raping and murdering occur? With people being home and people coming by, Brendan being home by 10, all sorts of stuff. The guilters who constantly say that Steven's story keeps on changing.
Never.
When?
No. No. And as a matter of
same.
fact, if they actually did the homework, if they actually sat down and took the time to write down everything, every part, every date, every time of this narrative, and then turn around and listen to phone calls and actually skim through all the photos and all the evidence, they're going to see a lot of shadiness and notice that during the time when he was supposed to be doing all this, he was actually on the phone with Jody, or actually, doing something else, when supposedly the narrative is he was raping and killing Teresa Hallback.
Covered in sweat.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Don't forget about covered in sweat.
Yeah.
Forget about
Dripping
covered
in sweat. Mm-hmm.
I want to know how he burned a body and nobody smelled it. So everybody saw this fire. Everybody saw the fire, but nobody smelled the body. Come on.
And people are even stopping by next to the fire.
Right. Josh Radon did not see the fire in the fire pit. He says he saw the fire in the burn barrel.
Correct.
Right. So.
So which is the?
The only time I see Steven's story change or fluctuate is after he's talked to somebody else. And somebody else says, well, this happened. Well, this was going on. And then I can't even really think of a specific incident off the top of my head.
When he's talking to Barbara is a good example, right? Where Steven, there's that one too. But even Steven he can't quite remember what night he burns the brush, right? He didn't remember that it was the 31st. And so when he talks to Barb, he said, no, we saw that when we came back from seeing Scott's mother after surgery, and that happened on the 31st. I was like, okay, well, that must have been when it is. I mean, that's what I was saying before, is that he legitimately does not remember a lot of the events of that night. They're not.
No, as a matter of fact, before somebody says to him any of that, he's thinking it was a week or two before he had a fire, or since he had a fire of any kind.
Yeah, but as soon as Barbara says it was that night, he's like, oh yeah, yep, I agree. You say it must be. Say it was that. It must be true, and he takes that as doctrine. So that's more of him owning up to the things that he's done. Interestingly, in that phone call that I mentioned earlier of Barb with Barb shortly after Brendan gets arrested, he says the incident with the bleaching. What Barb says, what about that bleach all over his pants? He says that happened after they cleaned up something with a snowmobile or something, but that was weeks before. That was weeks before the incident with the October 31st. So, there you have it. And another good example is the blood in the sink. I mean, that vile Megan Elizabeth and Roberta Glass think that Kathleen Zeller is desperate because that's her best argument about cleaning up the blood in the sink. But Steven actually tells people on the phone in the early phone calls that he remembers something significant, and that significant thing is that somebody that significant thing is that somebody cleaned up the blood. So somebody, some dimwits like Roberta and Megan are saying, well, this is they just cooked this up. No, they've been. Steven, remember, I mean, I don't think that this is an earth-shattering thing to remember, but Steven has been saying that since the November timeframe, since the beginning, and he felt that was a significant remembrance. But it's not the importance of the remembrance; it's the lack of changing of the story in my mind.
I agree with you. If you ask me what happened to the there was an animal control lady at my house last week. Let's just say the animal control lady went missing and the last place they know her to be was at my house. I couldn't even tell you what time it was when she was there. You just don't remember. You know he had no reason to remember everything he did that day. So here they are coming at him days later. I can't remember. I can't remember what I did Monday.
My days all blend together. 2 weeks from now, 2 weeks ago, I can't remember what I did on a specific day that was any different from any other.
Yeah,
exactly. So I don't feel any of his inconsistencies can really be considered inconsistencies as much as they're just jumbled memories, because again, like I said, I don't know what else I did that day that the animal control lady was at my house. I don't know what time it was. I know she came, I know she left, and I went about my day. So I don't really think that it screams he's guilty, because a couple of his details have changed because, he didn't quite remember what happened at this time. And I'm really still not sure he had a fire on the 31st. I'm really not.
And he's been running around asking everybody in the background also to try and piece it all together. So yes, it is going to evolve slightly, but it never really substantially changes.
No, I don't see anything that he said that changed. I don't see anything that is substantial.
Drastic.
Yeah, it's all.
And Earl and Fabian are in the same boat. They both, in their interviews with law enforcement, say that the day that they went rabbit hunting, that day they went down by Steve in the golf cart, was Earl says it was Wednesday and Fabian says it was Tuesday. So,
and we all know that it was Monday.
And we all know that it was Monday. If you really had the fire.
And also, in the beginning, to go with your fire narrative, Christy, there is no fire talk. It's actually, I think Scott Tadich is the first person who brings up there being a fire on maybe his second interview with police. If I
the size of it,
correctly.
anyway. Yeah. Steven doesn't deny burning the brush. He actually thought it was before. I mean, it's not enough fuel to burn a body. We all know that. Tires are not an accelerant, just in case you were wondering. If you look at pictures of his garage at the time, it was not covered with soot. Nobody reports the smell. It's just hard to believe that the Avery burn pit was the primary burn location. There's not enough cremains there for it to be for it to be her. The scattering of the bones everywhere, including Custer Road. The fact that Bushman's wife owned a crematory. And there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of leads unfollowed here. Let's say that.
And you can cross off every one of those and just go with there's no friggin' pictures.
Oh yeah.
No pictures, or it didn't happen.
Look, there's a lot of cases that we can point to. If anybody wants to look up, Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn were notorious terrorists from a terrorist organization called the Weather Underground. And they had them dead to rights. Speaking of rights, they are not in prison today because law enforcement did not read them their Miranda rights when they were arrested. And that got them off completely. And this is a slightly different case because it's not an issue of Steve not getting read his Miranda rights. But when you ask yourself, is it possible that because of some things like the lack of photos, that law enforcement screwed this up so bad, that and other parts of the investigation, that they should be rendered, not admissible in court because the most basic, rules of forensic discovery were not followed with regard to girding things up. Is that a reason to throw this out? Is there enough suspicion that those bones could have been planted that we don't see in situ pictures that that they cannot be accepted by the court? I know a lot of people on Reddit are like, oh well, you don't want to get him off on a technicality. You guys are saying he's innocent. Well, you know what? In order to prove that he's guilty, you need to establish his guilt through evidence. And if this the suspiciousness of this evidence, the key, the bones, the blood, 6 drops, right? It's just not enough for me.
If there was
and the convenience of it.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's so convenient. Where's the church lady when you
it takes if you were to take away all of the suspicious evidence, there's no other evidence.
That's true.
I can see some pieces in every case being suspicious. I can see even a legit piece of evidence having some suspicion around it. But if you take away the suspicious pieces in this case, you have nothing left. You should at least have something that's concrete that there is no disputing. And they have nothing, not one single piece.
Right. That's an amazing point. It really is.
If you take away the key, because the key is suspicious as anything, I'm sorry. It really is. The blood doesn't make any sense. You don't drip flakes. If you take away everything that is suspicious, you're left with nothing. So find something else that proves he did this.
There isn't anything left. Those were all the major points of evidence. So when Zoellner gets her evidentiary hearing, I think there's going to be hell to pay.
Yeah, I hope that we get to see that day. I really do. I think we will. I think he's got a fair shot with the Court of Appeals. It's really his only shot at this point. And I'm not saying anything because she's exonerated 20 people and I've exonerated 0. So I'm going to let her do her job. And
well, she said it's the higher courts, right?
Yes, she wanted out of the circuit court. And I'm not a lawyer. I don't pretend to be a lawyer. My knowledge of law is personal experience and the things that I have learned from the knowledgeable people on this case. And in my opinion, the higher court has not ruled against Kathleen in any way, shape, or form yet. The only denial she's gotten from them was her request for more words on her latest filing, and they denied that. Anything she's brought before them, when she asked to be remanded back to circuit court, they did it 2 times, not once, but twice. And I just don't see that they've gone against her yet. And that gives me a good feeling. But again, we have no idea how high up this corruption goes and anything can happen. But I feel like if the appeals court wasn't at least looking, she wouldn't have even have gotten as far as she did.
Yeah, I feel the same way. That the appeals court has. They even made the comment that the state did not address the merits of Zoellner's file, of not the most recent filing, but the previous filing. And it's different people now that from the state that have to argue the case in the court of appeals.
Correct.
And by the way, Williams and Gahn and Fallon, all 3 of them thought that Zoellner was going to get an evidentiary hearing before Sukowitz ruled. That seemed to be sort of the common thinking. New high profile attorney submitting a bunch of new stuff. Wouldn't be surprising at all if she gets an evidentiary hearing, right? Because that's not a new trial. An evidentiary hearing is a hearing to say, has there been sufficient new evidence here that ought to lead to a new trial? That evidence can also include things like the Brady violations and whatnot as well. So I do believe that she'll get her evidentiary hearing, and it is possible that the Court of Appeals could have a Sukowitz-like judge on it who's going to put Mr. Magoo blinders on and say, nope, it's not, I heard your thing, but it's not enough. But if she's dropping bomb after bomb after bomb in this evidentiary hearing, and it gets the level of exposure on media, on television, because I think it'll be a big event. People are tuned into 20 million people. They're going to make a big deal out of it because they think they can get ratings out of it. That's my hope there. The evidentiary hearing happens, gets a ton of media exposure, and Zoellner is dropping bombs like crazy. It'll be telling whether or not they allow cameras in the court or not.
It will be. I'm sure we'll see it. I'm sure it won't go down quietly.
Okay, well, I'm conscious of time again, and there's more calls to discuss. I think we're probably at call number 8.
Well, actually,
we've got for
we had on the list the media calls.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
media calls. We can go
You
over
want to
those
talk-
next time. Right.
All right. So does anybody have any closing comments about the calls? Well, we certainly have to revisit because we're not that far into the calling list. Phoebe?
There is one call. I'm not sure the number. It's a ways it's a little ways before 42, where Barb's in the background, and she said, the cop said to her, "Do you still want your life?"
Oh yeah.
And that's, I believe, well, they had her on the marijuana charge.
Yep.
Yeah,
They wanted this conviction badly. It was high profile. I'm sure they were getting pressure.
People often say,
multiple different
well, the
ways.
cops wouldn't have killed Teresa, but look, they kind of like threatened Barb's life right there. What does that mean? Do you still want your life?
Yeah. Life as she knows it. I'm not sure that was a threat on her life so much of it as a threat on her way of life. We're going to haul you in for your drug abuse. We're going to take one of your sons
It was
away.
a threat on life as she
It's
knows it to be.
It's a threat. It's a threat.
It was
It's a threat no matter how you slice it.
Yep.
But yeah, they were putting a lot of pressure, and would love to hear Bobby's interview, and would love to hear what audio they have that they're not releasing. Christy?
I'm just gonna keep listening. I mean, I'm on 228, so I got at least 500 to go. I appreciate the people that are jumping ahead and telling me things that are happening in the future, but I just really I'm just going to go back to listening. I've listened to 60 hours so far, and I'm just going to keep on more than 60 hours. And I'm just going to keep on going. I'm finding them very interesting. I complained about it at first and was like, oh my God, this is a horrible, tedious job, but I don't know. I'm picking things up now, and it's definitely got me going, and I can't wait to finish.
Well, I think that those things that you're picking out regarding the things that they are using against him later, like the sweat and the sex, is that and Brendan, absolutely are gold, because that's really what they did use to formulate that case.
The ability to look
thanks
back.
for doing that.
You're welcome. I'm appreciating doing it. I'm enjoying doing it. I appreciate everybody's, recognition for doing it. It really wasn't that important to me for everybody to know I did it, but I'm glad that everybody's reading. Well, people are reading them. People are using them. People are referencing them. I'm going to go all the way to the end, no matter how long it takes. I will get to the end of them. And it's just, there's a lot in there. There's a lot in there. And there's a lot in what's not being said, if that makes sense.
Yep, it does.
So just keep listening to the calls, and Zoe is doing a great job uploading them. I love her to death. I'm glad she's doing it. I'm thankful for the guys that got the FOIA request done, and I'm sure that this
Rookie. Let's say their names. AC Rookie and
AC
Kaboom
Rookie
Blam
and
Zoom.
Yep, they were instrumental in getting this information, and something tells me this is just going to open the floodgates, and I'm pretty sure it's not going to stop at 1,000 calls. I'm pretty sure we're going to be getting a lot more.
Team effort. It's a team effort.
Absolutely. We're all here for the same reason.
And for viewers and listeners, as you're going through these calls, if you have specific comments, jump on our Discord or comment on our YouTube. Let us know. Pick some stuff apart, help us out here.
Absolutely. If I missed something, please message me. Find me on Twitter, find me on Facebook, find me on Discord, message me and tell me if I missed something or something you want to add. I'm not perfect. I'm sure I missed some things. Please feel free. I don't mind at all. We can talk about them. We talk in Discord frequently. Come over and talk to us about them.
Yes, we have a phone line, and you can speak to us in conference call style on the phone.
It was great to have Myred on the podcast, on a recent podcast that we had on our Saturday Coffee with Fall Play. She's a new
Yes.
YouTuber. If you guys have a great theory or have a point to make, jump on our Discord, and you could end up on one of these podcasts telling your theory to everybody. No theory is we do not discourage people's theories here. Every theory is worthy of investigation.
And we're a large cooperative full of researchers that are working on the same puzzle.
Yep, different. You have specifics about different areas of the case than I do, than Jeff does. I think together, this is a great team. I think this is a great way we're doing this.
Well, thanks everybody for listening. And with that, this has been a Foul Play production.